Welcome to the SaaS AdLab podcast, where we interview the stories of SaaS founders, entrepreneurs, and CEOs. My name is Luis. I'm the founder of Fantôm agency, a digital marketing agency specialized in scaling SaaS companies. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Chits. He is the co-founder over at GoComet. And first of all, thanks so much for being on here. I know it's really early for you. I think we rescheduled this maybe like 3 or 4 times. So I appreciate your patience. And to get started, right, why don't you just really dive into how everything sort of happened, right? You seem like you're very not very young, but you're definitely a younger individual, right? And the company seems very enterprise level. So I'm really curious as to how, what were the sort of steps that were taken into building GoComet?
Yeah. Thanks, Louis, for having me. And yes, I believe that I'm young. It's just like a little bit of, but yeah. So I think we started in 2016, later part of the 2016, and uh, how GoComet started was very differently where we are right now. Sorry. So basically, I started my first company when I was in college. In 2015, I graduated from Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. And after my first company, I exited it to another larger company, which was funded by SoftBank. And then I had some cash in the bank so basically for fun, we started an export import company, basically moving things from China to US. And there was no strings attached in that business. It was like just have fun, make a little bit of money, nothing about it. And it was very small. I mean, not like any large export import company. So in that, we started facing some problems with international freight negotiation. So that's where we jumped in and said, "Hey, look, this is a nice space. It's really large. It's a global space,
Yep.
and certainly it has a lot of lacuna in terms of technology across the entire board. So
Right.
if we as technologists and as younger founders, we wish that we'll build more of a technology heavy business rather than operational heavy business, which playing basically on our strengths. And that's what how eventually GoComet started, and we immediately raised our first round kind of when we left housing, and then yeah, slowly things started shaping up. So at an enterprise level, when we just started GoComet, it was completely different. We were building something like a digital freight forwarder. But when we started pitching that digital freight forwarder to typically large enterprises, we were pitching to a very large steel company in India. Um, they said, guys, you are too small to really negotiate freight against the big guys like DHL and Kuehne+Nagel and Panalpina. I said, yeah, that actually makes sense. I mean, however we think we are nothing as compared to these large freight forwarders. We cannot even beat their prices or their service levels. And that's where he said that how about I just take the software piece and start negotiating with my current suppliers. And that's where we started working with that company for a month or a couple of months. That deal did not go through though, but it led us to that level of building an enterprise SaaS company in logistics.
So super interesting, right? I mean, just the entire story is kind of like it's a very unique one. It's not your typical SaaS founder story where he's just grinding away almost. And I'm sure like that's part of some of the pieces here, whether it was with GoComet or the company before that, but still it seems like it's a very unique case.
Yes.
And so was the other company at all related to the space, to the niche that you're in now, or it's like how do you get there?
So great. So I at that point of time we were really confused on really what to do with our life. We had raised money and we were a bit confused. Like, okay, we raised money on something, but that something was clearly not working, and or we didn't see that scaling. It was working, but we didn't see that scaling rapidly, or we didn't see that scaling in a more like a economically viable business model, right? So how that happened was we basically started, we started hustling. I started hustling a lot in the market, right? As the hustler. So we immediately landed. I made a cold call, literally a cold call to one of the largest pharma companies in India. It was not one of the largest; it is the largest pharma company in India. And these guys, they said like, this looks interesting. We had absolutely no traction at that point of time, but they said that these guys look interesting, and you definitely are solving one of our key problems with an enterprise SaaS product. Like, we gave them a vendor management kind of a tool that, okay, use GoComet and start managing a multiple freight forwarders using GoComet. And these guys said, yep, that makes sense. And how about you do a small pilot, a proof of concept? And at that point of time, obviously it was very enticing, but we kind of held our ground and we negotiated a paid pilot, right? Because it was the largest pharma company. And why I negotiated a paid pilot, the rationale behind was that I wanted the company to be keen on it. Was small beans, but if there's a money on the table, the other person is at least committed to the cause, right? At least he uses for a couple of months. And in that pilot, we started seeing some interesting things. Initially we built up a form of auctioning for that company, which ended up increasing their freight rates on a couple of lanes. So it didn't make sense, right? So then we realized that, okay, there's something that is going wrong. Then we looked at the data and we started theoretizing. And basically it was a very, very short time. Like, it was just 2 months, so it has to be like super power packed. One of my co-founders actually sat from morning 10 o'clock to evening 9 o'clock in that company's office so that the product is done. And suddenly, before that company, we were doing like very small, like 4-5 shipments a month kind of a volume. But after that company came in, suddenly the volume pumped up to 2,000 shipments a month, right? And initially, tech guys were also chilling out in the office, and then suddenly everything started ramping up, right? So suddenly the volume is huge. And when we realized that the auction that we created was not right, there was not the right kind of thing that we would done in the market now. But we tweaked the product a little bit, and then that company started saving substantial amount of money.
Okay.
And plus the user option was super high. They liked the product. The company was also, that pharma company was very supportive.
That's great.
Yeah, let's go for it, right? And then we negotiated a very good commercial contract. Considering the stage, it's a very good commercial contract that we negotiated. It's still one of our top 5-6 customers. That company is still one of our 5.
So since this is one of the first ones too, right? And there's still a customer.
That was absolutely first one.
And there's still a customer.
And it is still obviously very close to all of our hearts, and we still.
That's great.
So yeah, things did work out. So one of the learnings that I had, when you're building a SaaS company, especially at an enterprise level, and a lot of times you don't know what you're doing, right? Probably you are like in the mood that, okay, we built something and this looks interesting, but you don't know the exact core product or exact core proposition. You should always tap the biggest guy in the market. Because what I've realized, the big companies are big because they are innovation friendly. Same thing happened in Thailand. Thailand again, when we went to Thailand, we just started international, absolutely had no clue how to sell SaaS internationally. It requires a lot more depth than India. Our first customer was one of the largest companies in Thailand. Singapore, again, one of the very, very large automobile companies, was one of our first adopters. So things.
And what was the key factor that these huge companies were going for the small guys in this case?
See, number one, our product is a little uniquely positioned. The problem that we target is not solved by any other current software product. Not the way we solve it, right? It's substantially better because we built completely from scratch for international freight logistics and have a full suite of logistics resource management software. We call it as LRM suite for solving a lot of niche things.
That's cool.
Now, second thing is that the larger the enterprise is, the bigger the problem is. The scale of the problem is bigger, and it is more kind of pertinent for the enterprise. So that's where if we give them a good suite of product which is not operationally super expensive and does not have a very, very high upfront deployment cost or something, they kind of go for it.
That's great. One of the things that you brought up earlier just now was the difficulty of selling the SaaS internationally, right?
Yes.
And I think that's something that, I wouldn't completely understand because I'm not selling software, right? Like we're really just getting leads for companies in the software space, but we're not the ones selling the product, right? After all. So I think that's a good, thing to kind of touch on here is what were some of the kind of like, objections or barriers that you ran into when saying you went from selling purely in India to selling in Thailand to selling in Japan. What are some of those key differences that just make it, harder enough to make it an issue?
Yep, makes sense. So see, selling in India was every country has their own challenges. Like I can tell you about three markets that I've certainly worked in: India, Singapore, and Thailand, where I have personally worked a lot. So Singapore, Malaysia is very similar in behavior. So I consider mostly I can same market. But India is very relationshipy kind of market,
So
right?
it's more it's a cultural issue that's happening.
Exactly. There are cultural differences, yeah, definitely, and because of that cultural differences, your sales cycle does change quite a bit. So sales cycle and approach does change quite a bit. Like for example, in a country like India, um, you don't know how the negotiation and when the negotiation is going to happen, and if the negotiation is even going to happen. Like I'm not kidding. I'm Indian, right? But Indians are really very hard negotiators when it comes to cost. I mean, frankly,
They're
you
really
go into
good.
an huh?
They're really good at negotiating.
It's not about good. Sometimes some people are ruthless, hands down ruthless, right? And you go into an enterprise, they say, so even though the guy would like the product, but they will have a complete poker face, and they'll say, no, it does not look good. It's not like, okay, I want to close this account. I have sales targets on my head, and you say, okay, let's give them a free pilot, right? And 1 month in the free pilot, people may use, may not use, and then you are also concerned, right? You've given a free pilot, and initially you try to pitch pricing, initially you try to close pricing, but the guy said, no, you first do pilot, then we'll see. And this thing puts you in a big trouble, right? Once you've done half the pilot, and then you're looking
Right.
at yeah, and let's close, right? Let's talk commercials, let's talk numbers. But the guys keep on delaying, and then you are desperate, and at that point they start negotiating a commercial, and you just give away at a cheap price, right?
Uh,
So that is India. Hard negotiators and very culturally diverse. Like selling in Mumbai is very different from selling in markets like Chennai, Hyderabad, south
uh.
of India, and different from selling in north of India.
So
Very,
how
very.
how do you fix those? I mean, not that they're problems, but how, like it's just what it is. But so how do you approach it? How do you try to offset for that difference? Do you I mean, I don't know the structure of the company, right? I don't know if you guys are remote or all in-house, but do you attempt then, if you're going to go after the Thai, um, you know, country, do you then just get people to sell that are from there and understand it more?
Yes, that is one thing. But recently, we are still early as a company, but recently in the past, like 4 5 months, what we have started doing is we have started controlling the process quite a bit. That, at every point we have defined that, okay, these are like, say for example, 10 steps to close a company, right? And it's like it's properly define each and every step, even certain communication level steps. Like for example, is GoComet matching internal KPIs of the company? If GoComet is matching internal KPIs of the company, let's say if their board has said that we need some bit of transparency, and we kind of make sure that GoComet fits that, then there's a higher chance of selling, because then it's more of you buying rather than me selling.
Right.
Does it make sense? So basically, that's where we started positioning the product better, which has helped us penetrate some good accounts and start penetrating deals faster. And then there are alignment levels that we have to define, that okay, are the users, GM, influencers aligned? Are they not aligned? Where they are in their entire thing? So all these small things we have started defining in the sales process, and that is true for any culture. Like, but cultural differences are huge, especially in looking at countries like India, Singapore, Thailand, Southeast Asia is very different culturally.
How many countries are you guys in now?
So we are actively present in India is still one of our biggest markets. India, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, and we have just started Europe, Germany, and
Nice.
Netherlands. So these are like
How did they
first, huh?
go ahead?
So basically, the first three, four markets are core markets for us, like Southeast Asia and India is super core for us, and Germany is still just started. So yeah.
How do they negotiate in Germany and Europe?
I have negotiated. We have some few customers there, which are mostly cross sells or upsells between customers
Okay.
within our current customers. So not really new set of customers. We do have some presence, but not really.
Uh-huh.
So it's still early. Haven't negotiated much.
Right. That's interesting. Now, to kind of switch gears here, what is the current sales process? A little bit more in detail. How are you guys currently, how do you say, okay, let's call this company, or this company could be, a good prospect? What does that look like? Is it all just, pick up the phone and call people? Are you guys doing any sort of advertising? What's really going on as far as marketing?
Yeah. So, in terms of sales, let's talk about sales first. So, basically, in sales, the first part of the system is like identification, right? Who's the right company? So, first, in terms of sales, we work on a very, very limited funnel. So, for example, at any point of time, I give my sales guys a 30, 40 company funnel. That's it. You don't have to work after, there may be 1,000 companies in the market that you can run after, but you will just get 30, 40. Even if you have to add one or two more, you need to have get some sort of a permission from me,
Mm-hmm.
because if I give them a limit, that's the thesis. And then let's go into the sales process. So the thesis is that as long as these guys work on a limited funnel, they spend more time on accounts in order to make sure that they move, right? I have large accounts in that funnel, like probably say a couple of Fortune 500 companies. They will obviously not say yes to you in the very first call, right? You will need to run after them. You need to warm them, make sure that the companies are understand the value a little more, and then that's the idea. The sales process is split into obviously six parts for us right now. The first and before that, there's an inside sales process. So inside sales is a separate team which their KPI is to start setting number of certain number of sales qualified leads and meetings. Then the sales process starts with demo in front of the decision maker. You need to identify the right decision maker and give them the demo. That is quite hard actually, because the product that we're selling does not have a clear buying need right now. We are still one of the early movers in the market. Because of that, it's hard to identify who's the decision maker. Right? It could be the CFO, it could be the head of exports, it could be the head of IT, and it's different for different companies.
Mm-hmm.
So the first part is identifying DM and selling and giving the demo to the decision maker. Then second part is matching GoComets, internal KPIs to GoComets value propositions to companies' internal KPIs. As I told you, right? It has to be, you have to push GoComet so that it's a buying decision, not a selling one.
Yeah.
Third is GoComet is a user, decision maker, and an influencer aligned. Because a lot of times the kind of problem that we have faced, and there's no easy way to say that, in especially emerging markets like India and Thailand, there are a bit of kickbacks in our business.
What is it?
Kickbacks. So user is taking money from the vendor,
Hmm.
and if GoComet comes in, it makes the entire process more transparent. So it's impossible to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the users are not aligned when we go there, right?
Yeah.
Then there are other aspects, like the users feel that they're losing control. Initially, it was they had a lot of say. Freight forwarders were giving them gifts,
Yeah.
right? Probably a bottle or expensive bottle of wine or something
Yeah.
like that, right? But when GoComet comes in, it becomes more of a process rather than a person-dependent thing. It
Why
does.
not?
Then it's less or none, right? So it's like that. So the third is that GoComets. So it's a process, and it's an important active part of the sales process to make sure that the user and the decision maker are aligned.
Mm-hmm.
They both are agreeing to the value proposition and want to go ahead. That is not happening. Your sales is not gonna happen. Wait it out. Fourth is a lot of customers ask for us for a pilot or a POC. We give them a 1 month free, sometimes paid POC or pilot, but now we make sure that the determinants of success and failure of that POC are very clearly defined on an agreement or a state. Right. So, yeah. Sorry.
I was gonna say I didn't want to interrupt you, but what are the what's the criteria that defines whether or not you give the pilot for free or you charge for it?
See, the criteria is the complexity sometimes, complexity and the scale. Because if it's a small company, let's say a company which is doing like say 20, 25 shipments a month, which is not smaller in general, but small for us, right? We charge less. So in that case, yes, free POC doesn't work. We don't mind because you just have to probably train 2 users for it.
Right.
That's that. Right?
Gotcha.
But for a large company, yes, you would need a paid one because the scale is huge. The complexity is huge. You would need to build some sort of configurations in the software for them to really work on. So these are some determinants. So then there's a pilot, free or paid pilot. Then comes into commercial negotiation and a closure, that means purchase order released from the customer. So these are 6 steps, start from set meetings, DM, KPI matching, users, pilot, commercial negotiation, and then purchase order closure.
Wow, very complex, right?
So we have to define it. We define the process in such a way. So,
that's good. I mean, it looks like everything's and all of this has been built out in a period of what, 4 years, since 2006. So
2016. So we basically started 2016 and we are in so 3 years. 2017 April we started selling GoComet actually in the market. So it's been 3 years.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And what
were mostly product dev rather than sales dev, really.
Yeah.
So that's fair. Yeah.
That's great. What does marketing look like at the enterprise level in such a unique niche?
So again, our marketing's, I'll tell you the thesis of the marketing. The thesis is basically, we have to educate our customers because our product is niche, and second is it is solving a unique problem, as we discussed, right? So marketing is more of educational, right? That you have to make sure that you write a lot of content, blogs, get featured in Gartner or all these magazines, all these premium journals, and start educating the customers that you exist and you solve a need. So it gives our salespeople some sort of a firepower, right, to sell. Second aspect is, once the company is in our funnel, either through a direct call, LinkedIn or something, it gets into a CRM, and then we basically retarget those enterprises using the content and marketing strategies. And that's, again, the thesis is just educational. Educational. Right? So that's.
I think a lot of, obviously a lot of enterprise is you have to educate people on the software, especially if it's cutting edge, right? Like there's nobody else doing it or anything like that. You just, that's what you decided to do. So now you got to deal with it. But the other thing is, how can you do that at scale?
We are still figuring that out.
Yeah.
At scale, see, there are tools to really scale that up because, it's not about writing more content. It's about distributing content.
Right. It's distributing it to the right people. Because if the content's there, you only really need, this is obviously just a ballpark, right? But if you have 20 pieces of content that just walk somebody through the entire process, you could potentially just get away with that. It's just, are the right people looking at it?
Exactly. That's the idea. So at scale, there are a lot of things that we are doing. Obviously, it starts with marketing drip campaigns, and then writing content, getting it featured in key industry journals, newsletters, blogs, all these things. The idea is so the processes have to be built for scale. So, for example, let's say you have 5,000 companies or 5,000 unique companies with 10,000 user base right now looking at that content that you'd ideally like to approach. If the number scales 10 times, the processes should be such that it should be the same process scaling everything else.
Yeah.
Right? It be just more number of people that you're sending it to. So that's what we have developed recently.
Nice. Very cool. Now, another question that I wanted to ask is about how many people are currently working for GoComet, and then the other one is, how do you manage the team?
Yeah. So these are challenges that it's, as a young founder, you do face.
And there's no right answer, right? Like it's always gonna be a process. So and there's always room for improvement. So it's not, it's not to say, I'm not asking to see if you're doing it right or something. I just want to
I
see
understand.
how you're doing it.
No, I'm very transparent. I'm very upfront. You can point it out if I'm doing something wrong. I'll be the first person.
You're probably doing things right.
No, no. I'm really I really like to be critic when it
Hmm.
comes to my approach to things. It helps me improve things. So right now around 55 people are working for GoComet across offices in Mumbai, Bangkok, Singapore, and there are two smaller offices in Bangalore and Delhi, which are
Nice.
primarily sales. So Mumbai is the biggest office, which has a majority of the people across tech, product, sales, key account management, customer success, all the other HR, all the other things are in
Mm,
Mumbai.
okay.
So the way we manage it is we are four founders, right? So each has their own teams. So basically, I handle business development, sales. I also handle the board, investor relations, fundraising. Gautam, he handles basically product, key account management, customer success. Gautam, along with the person called Prasad, they basically handle this entire piece that is between sales and tech, right? Everything between sales and tech, these guys handle, and they make sure that the product delivery is fine. What is the next set of product additions? How to make the product more valuable? How to make it more sticky? All those things they just figure out. So that's the kind of the think tank in the company. And then the tech. So basically, they build the right algorithms, they build the right product features. So basically, Ayush and Mehul, my other two founders, they ensure that the right kind of tech products and tech systems are in place, and they handle the tech team. So we have defined the teams between all of us, right?
Right.
Very quite clearly. The way I manage team, it's sales, inside sales, and for investor relations, basically, it's just me right now. The way I manage my team is that there are a couple of things. As I told you, right, we have a limited fund, and one thing that I know is like closing GoComet, right? These guys are sales rock stars, right? And they know how to sell, but they don't know how to close GoComet, right? So week over week, I have discussions with my sales team. Obviously, there is a CRM in place which makes sure that all the data is there for every part and every process of the sales team. But week over week, I have a call with each and every one of them. This team is still small, right? So like probably a 30 minutes or an hour conversation on how their funnel is moving. Has anything moved?
That's awesome.
And people whom I can meet, like I'm in Singapore, based out of Singapore. So John, he heads Singapore and Malaysia, very senior guy, great guy. So I work with John almost, from I can actually see face to face, work with him a lot. But for everyone else, I just have like a 1 hour conversation at least a week. Make sure that where they are, where they're struggling, and have multiple conversations. Do definitely be a part of their active sales cycle as well. If they need to show the face of the co-founder in a deal,
Hmm.
I'm the person, right? So all those
That's
things.
great. That's awesome. That's really, really cool.
You have to
Now,
understand what they're going through. So that's very important, right?
now to kind of switch gears here and talk more about, the personal side of growing a business, being an entrepreneur, and all these things. One of the one of the questions that I really like to ask is, let's say you were to go back to 2016,
Mm.
knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself, or what would you do differently from, say, day one?
Um, Good question. So basically, three things. I think first would be I my nature, or my persona is more of hustler and kind of get it right, and aggressive in that sense, right? So I can sell. I'm quite confident on that, right? I can sell as a founder. I'm very passionate about building GoComet. It's really fun. So I
Uh,
definitely can do that. But one thing that I would tell myself is to learn how to develop and train people, which I've learned literally just last year.
mhm.
Because at certain point of time we were facing issues with scaling GoComet because our salespeople were not trained enough. So I
Mhm.
need to build myself into them. And a lot of senior people told me that you should do that, but I was like, no, it'll all happen if you just hire great guys. They will start selling. But that
Mhm.
doesn't happen. So that is first thing, is to scale the team along with how I and impart my learnings there.
How did you do that?
So we have a very solid training program for people now. So we train them across industry, sales processes, and
How did you do it yourself? How did you? Because you
okay.
said you had to learn it first and able to be able to teach them. So how did you learn it?
So what I did was at this stage, obviously you don't have that much data, but you start learning from case studies of the kind of companies that you've closed and the kind of companies that
Gotcha.
you have closed. Start really thinking what happened, how did you close them, what were the key determinants for that, and then start putting into documentation. It's very simple, but it goes a long way. Let's start
Yeah.
documenting everything that you've done, and it'll yield results. Definitely. Then you can build a training program on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Started pitching as if I was pitching a customer, doing mock pitches, and tough mock pitches, and then coming up with a lot of data, FAQs, everything. So we've developed people across industry, because our industry is a niche, right? So you need to understand international freight really well to sell.
Yeah.
Second is sales processes, what to say, what not to say, how to pitch. And third is basically solutioning, how product works, how can GoComet solve these problems or not. So I've
Mm-hmm.
trained people across these three things.
Very well. Couple questions here, and then we can start wrapping up. Are you married, single, anything like that? Kids?
No, it's early. I'm 26 now. So, but I have a girlfriend, and
Okay.
she's an Australian. So
Awesome.
yeah. So that's about it. Yeah.
How how do you balance work time for her, time for family?
Yeah, so I'm quite rooted, quite attached to my family. I mean, these days frankly I don't see it that hard, because FaceTime and Skype and all these things are there. So I tend to have a lot of video calls with them if I'm away. Rather than have a normal call with conversation, I try to have a video call. It's better.
Yeah.
It's really better. Even a 30 minutes conversation can be quite impactful. Second, I do take off my time from work, right? There are days, like, for example, over a weekend, like a Saturday or Sunday, I meditate a lot, right? Almost, 3 hours straight meditate.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
so yeah, it's important to keep myself, balanced, else nothing can
Yeah.
work. So,
Yeah.
and weekends generally I spend, if I have something urgent to do, I have to do it. I do it like making a presentation or some work that I have procrastinated over the weekend. I have to finish over the weekend. But weekends I generally tend to catch up with friends, family. Definitely because my parents are in India, so definitely have video calls. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
about it. Weekends are for family primarily.
Yeah. Perfect. I actually have a friend in India, and he told me recently he went to, I don't remember what, for a meditation, and I think it was like, I want to say it was 24 hours, just nothing, just meditating, and he said it was completely life changing.
So similar. I went for a course like for 10 days. It was a retreat, and for 10 days you can't speak, right? They take everything, your phone, books,
Yeah, yeah. I
everything.
think maybe, I don't remember if it was 24 hours, maybe it was 10 days, or I just remember the long time.
And every day you meditate 11 hours a day.
Wow.
So, and it's free of cost. It's free of cost. They don't charge you anything. But
Uh-huh.
if you go there, you can't come back for 10 days, right? So it's like that. So I did that quite some time back, 5, 6 years back. So I do that really quite regularly.
Yeah, that's awesome. And do you have, what are some of the companies that you look up to? SaaS companies.
Yes, definitely. So a couple of them. So there's one company called Contentful, which I've recently started following. Similar sized, they had a similar journey when they started, and they have actually managed to kind of go across the board. They started was selling probably products worth 100 $150 ARR, literally, and now they're selling products worth 100,000 $150,000 $1 million ARR as I don't know about million, but definitely at the top of the spectrum,
Wow.
right? Which is the journey has been incredibly amazing. They have faced a lot of problems. Younger founders, I mean, that point when they started, the founder was youngish, and so that is one company. Our other company is HubSpot. Love the way they have done work on the marketing.
Yeah,
Even though
they dominate every marketing keyword you can think of.
yes, exactly, and the way they have built a product, it's simple but super effective.
Yeah.
Love the way HubSpot works. So yeah, these are a couple of companies that I really look up to.
Great. Do you have any books that you recommend?
Couple of them. So these recently I've started reading finished a book called Business Adventures by John Brooks. It's a book on, a lot of case studies in the past 50, 60 years on how interesting things happen in the business world. So that's interesting. And another is Founders at Work.
I
It's
haven't read it. I've heard really good things about it.
Yes, again, I love to read case studies of what has happened, go
Yeah.
deep into them, and see how companies were framed in the initial years.
Mhm.
So, which is again very, very interesting.
Very cool. And a couple last questions here. We'll start wrapping up. Where can people find you online, Chit?
So I'm not that social, but I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm not that active on Facebook or Twitter or anything, but I'm
Uh-huh.
active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So feel free to reach me out. So my name is Chitransh Sahai. It's a unique name. You'll just find me.
Yeah.
So you will just go on LinkedIn or search GoComet, and my email ID is chitransh@gocomet.com. So feel free to buzz me.
Awesome. And last question here. Do you have any questions for me?
So yeah, what are since you've seen a lot of companies, what are the companies that you personally follow? I always wanted to and early stage companies, still early or mid stage companies, but which you follow or which you're certainly impressed with. Would love to follow them. Yeah.
Earlier stage companies. My favorite right now, like just my complete, I don't know, it's a Notion. You probably heard of it.
Which one? Sorry.
Notion.so. Just
Okay.
amazing. If you think of, Trello plus Asana plus every other sort of collaboration tool you could think of put together plus Excel,
Hmm.
but in a way that actually makes sense. It's insane what they're doing. It looks beautiful. You can make anything on it. So that's one of my favorites right now. HubSpot, obviously they're not really early stage anymore, but like you said, it's just, I don't think there's anybody out there that doesn't look up to them.
Yeah.
Um, so I'd say those. And then another one is actually one of my clients right now, but it's called Glorify. And they're like a Canva. Think of Canva, but only for e-commerce.
Okay.
It's really, really cool. They're doing a really good job with the product. The team is super awesome. So it's really, I think, you can check out the website, it's glorifyapp.com, but
Okay.
doing some really cool stuff with that.
Got it. Got it.
And
Thanks. Some good companies.
yeah. And so that's really it. Thank you so much for being on here, Chit. It was a pleasure having you. And if for anyone that's watching, listening, make sure you subscribe, you like it. If you don't like it, just give it a thumbs down, I guess. But thank you all for listening, and thank you so much for being on here and sharing your journey so far. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Louis.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.